Well, good morning, everybody. Appreciate all of you showing up. It's great to see all of you again. We've got some new folks here. We've got some people we haven't seen in a little bit. For now, let's go ahead and stand up, and let's go ahead and start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, the Texas pledge.
Pledge allegiance.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Go ahead and take your seats, please. Okay, well, we're all been taking this, we're all seated, so please, let's take a moment of silence right now for those who cannot join us for our prisoners of war and missing in action still. Good, thank you. I'm a little biased whenever it comes to that. I'm not sure if any of you have noticed, like I always do 17 seconds whenever we do the POW and MIA moment of silence. For me, that represents the 17 Marines I've served with who were killed in action in Afghanistan. So for me, it's just a little tribute to them, and I'm glad they all take part of it. And if anybody wants to do a longer or shorter duration due to their own losses, please let me know. We can make that happen going forward. Okay, so let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. We'll start at the back. Please go ahead and say your name, branch of service, and anything else you'd like to mention.
Jane Winters, and I was in the Navy with him.
I'm John Winter, Navy.
Lady Wilkins, and I'm just.
Skip you.
Justice Stephen, okay. Stacey Campbell, Air Force.
Elaine Robertson, non-veteran, with my paper.
George Robertson, Air Force, 64 to 68.
Glad to hear.
Mark Bartels, Army. Scott Spence, retired Air Force A-10 driver. And while I'm talking, so my daughter, I was just explaining to the dentist, and they both have masters in history, and they both got hired today. The Medal Honor Museum opened up in Arlington. If you haven't gotten a chance to get down there, it's worth it. If you really want to make it kind of neat, Netflix, probably the best thing I've ever seen on Netflix. They run 8 to 10 Medal of Honor. So just look up Medal of Honor, and the stories are only like 45 minutes. So, but they're incredible. They bounce to the family and back to the environment the person was in, where they came from, how they did it, and generally just very ordinary people, not the real tough gun-ho Marine like Zach. A lot of these
Don't say that around me too.
the wimpy Air Force guys, you know, everybody's calling the Chair Force, but occasionally it happens. But it's really worth watching, and then go down there and there's some interactive things and stuff. But it's the museum itself is incredible, over 100,000 square feet.
Wow. Well, thanks, I appreciate it.
Are they there now? Like they work there now? Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
they're both full-time there. Charlotte Jones had a lot to, I think, donated the land to bring that thing there. And if you look up the museum itself, the architecture guy was pretty cool. He wanted it to look like a big piece of steel in the air that arms were holding up, so there's 4 big legs, and it's held up over a pond and beautiful grounds that you would be protecting the grounds, the strength of holding up the steel. That's what the guy was, and I think he kind of achieved it.
Okay, that's awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks, Scott.
Lieutenant Sheridan, Army.
Becky Gilbert, non-veteran. Rachel DeBruce, Coast Guard.
Rose Scott, Air Force.
My name is Zach Wallace, served in Afghanistan as a Marine, and we loved our A-10 drivers. I'll see if I can find it and put it on the Metroport Veteran Association Facebook page. But there is a picture of my unit. I feel very confident it was my unit, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. When we were in Afghanistan, there was a lot of experiences where the Taliban set up some pretty good complex ambushes against us. And and there's a social media page called Task and Purpose, and there is an A-10, the same plane that Scott flew, and it's doing a gun run, and Google Earth took a picture of the A-10 doing a gun run, and you see the smoke coming out of the cannon, and that was my AO, area of operations. So we give you a lot of grief, but at the same time, guys like me are probably here because of guys like you, so appreciate that, and Dennis too, and those guys.
So much smoke's coming out of that gun the first time they fired it on the range. They're only one-seat airplanes. The guy had to eject and flamed out both engines. So they had to figure out something to do with that smoke.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't really think about that. But so right now we have a great speaker coming up. We do have a couple of little announcements that I want to mention to you. We do have our Memorial Day ceremony taking place Monday, May 26th. If you have not come out before to Trophy Club's memorial ceremony, they have been doing an incredible job every year. They are adding a layer to it. There's a lot of volunteers throughout the town, and I don't know how, I don't know why, well, I do know why, but I don't know how, but they keep making it better and better. And as time progresses, we keep on getting a bigger population to attend their ceremony. And a lot of that, a lot of the why, a lot of the driving force behind it honestly came from this group. It came from people like Dennis Sheridan, who, and Jim Parrow and Carl Monger, who's not here right now. A lot of that came from these gentlemen who wanted to honor our own fallen. And so if you have not come out, please come out, because the town does a great job. I don't even live in Trophy Club or that close near it, but I will say it's worth the drive every time. It's worth sweating a little bit outside because it does get a little bit warm, does get a little humid. So dress appropriately, maybe bring some water if you'd like. But please make the effort to come out, because it is a fantastic event. And if there's somebody that you want to honor, this is the time and place to do it. One of the big things I always mention is, now, I think I've said it like last month and the month before, but in my eyes, I've lost 17 guys, like I already said, and I've lost a few recently due to the war at home. With that being said, every man dies 2 deaths. One is when his body is laid to rest, the second is when his name is spoken for the last time. So as we say their names, they're here with us. And if you want to honor somebody, please let me know. We'll see what we can do to maybe put their name on a wreath or something like that. But it is a very, very sacred ceremony for many of us here, and I hope all of you can attend. And Mr. Bartell's got something.
Well, I wanted to point out while you're over there, where the Veterans Memorial is, you'll notice there's a new tree there. So for Arbor Day, the Rotary Club, Trophy Club, planted a tree there with the help of some city people, because we needed some young guys to dig. We had a few, but we needed more. And it was kind of weird, because I know that there was a tree there before, because when they got down in the ground, they found the watering thing, for the sprinkler system for a tree.
Oh, really?
Oh, shit.
So that told me that there'd been one there that died and they'd been replaced.
Right. Well, I'm glad they all stepped up, so.
That was a good thing for Arbor Day.
Great, I appreciate you telling that, thank you. We do also have one of the things that's not up there right now, Gallant Few, the nonprofit organization that helps veterans with connections, coaching, and counseling. Is right now we are hosting our annual Patriot Challenge fundraiser. It is one of our biggest fundraisers of the year, and that allows Gallant Few to maintain its role in the job to keep going for the next year. So if you'd like to make a donation, you're welcome to. I'm not going to ever say no to that. This is a time where we ask for all of your support, because as we support veterans in a very transparent manner, we do a high quality job in supporting veterans in some capacity. Sometimes it's having a peer-to-peer conversation at the climbing gym. Sometimes it's talking to veterans, putting down bottles of pills so they don't overdose and commit suicide. But all of the donations go to funding our mission of helping veterans and supporting them. So if you'd like to, I would be very thankful for that, and I can get you connected to the people to make that donation safe and secure. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I think our last little announcement that we have is Mr. Rodriguez over here is going to be our speaker next month, so make sure you come on out. Now, he's an Army vet, right?
Yeah.
Army vet, yeah. Infantry, right?
No.
No, what was it? It was
Military intelligence.
Okay. So he's a smart guy. He Well, you'll have to come to our breakfast June 14th to find out. I'll
Well,
see you.
the only one here that understood oxymoron was the gentleman.
Does he understand?
Yeah, I get it.
That joke might have been hit him once or twice in his life already. So, okay, well, what I'm going to do now is probably do some push-ups because I failed to put my friend Mr. Stevens' bio up on the presentation. But I will say Justice has been a great, not only just a participant of Gallant Few, but he's been a great friend last, 5 months-ish. This year alone, at least. He's been, we met at the climbing gym. How him and I met, we did the veteran thing where we scanned each other, and in our minds we're like, he's a vet, but I'm not going to say anything until he says something. And then some words were exchanged that I probably can't say here that are a little too profane. But long story short, we found out he was in the Air Force, served as a TACP. He'll talk more about that right now, but since then he's been climbing with Gallant Few. I believe that he may have utilized some of our resources already, but at the same time he's been getting involved and he's been bringing other veterans to our organization and to the climbing program as well. So I'm not going to take too much more of his thunder. I'm tired of talking. I'm sure y'all are tired of hearing me and looking at me, even though I'm pretty. So go ahead and welcome Justice Stevens to the speech.
So, I speak a lot, and this is a small crowd, so I'm going to try to be as personable as I can with you guys. I was in the Air Force for almost 22 years, 21 and some change, before I retired in 2022, right at the beginning of the year. So that means I came in 2000, before September 11th. I was one of those guys that wanted to serve my country. I wasn't so worried about the college and stuff that came with the benefits you get with being in the military. I came from a patriotic family, but my father was in the Navy. He did cool stuff in Vietnam. I wanted to be a cool guy. I screwed up when I first joined the military because I wanted to go to college. I did, but I wasn't so focused on it. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to build things like the Medal of Honor Museum. I love design. I fell in love with the Sydney Opera House. And I had a family member who was an architect, and I wanted to be that kind of person that designed and built things that people looked at. Well, my family was really big in the military, and when I was about 17, the recruiter came by for the Army National Guard and started to tell me how combat engineers were the next step in being an architect. They were that first step. And man, my uncle, knowing it was bullshit, but knowing that I was a fuck up and I was living with them, he was like, yeah, no, this is what you need to do. And so I joined the Army. I joined the Army and became a combat engineer. I was in Illinois. So they had this opportunity for us to go to basic training at Fort Leonard, which wasn't that far away, between my junior and my senior year. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm doing it. I was dedicated, but it was a combat engineer year. And there wasn't one around my house. There was one in Southern Illinois, which was like 4.5 hours away. But I was dedicated. And so I went, and I figured out what a combat engineer was real quick, right? Went through AIT and got done and went home, and I was pretty disturbed over the fact that it had nothing to do with being an architect. But they gave me this option. They said, hey, 1 year in, you can get out and go active duty. And that met right up with graduating high school and everything else. Well, that next year was rough. I ended up moving out, wasn't living with my Aunt Liz anymore. I was still on the fuck up page, but I was more on the grown up, I want to graduate and party and be in the National Guard and whatever. Yeah. So a year in, I was getting 300s on my PT test, above 300s on my PT test. I was killing it. I wanted to go active duty. I wanted to be special forces. And that was my goal. I was going to join this new program that took you right into special forces as you crossed over. It was basic training, 2 18 X-ray series. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I could join it because I was going from the Guard into active duty. And I was like, fuck yeah. Well, they wouldn't let me out. My Guard unit wouldn't let me out. And so I started complaining. I started not going to my Guard unit there and going to one that was closer to me, that was airborne. It was cooler. but they wouldn't let me go active, and I couldn't figure out why. Come to find out, at the end of it all, this is a great little story, which I'll try to get not too much into, but my PT test and PT test of like 5 other guys took the bell curve, which I didn't understand at the time, but a PT test bell curve for the unit made our unit look better. And because of the few guys that not only passed, but got in the higher 300s, it made the whole unit look like we were doing pretty good. I mean, there were guys so fat at this unit, mechanics and engineers. There was a guy so fat that when he started out of the PT test and I was coming back on my run, he hadn't made it like anywhere. But he saw the first guys coming, so he turned around. You know, I don't know if you guys ever seen that on a PT test, but like the first guy's coming, he waits till like that big gap, and then he turns around, and you know his fat ass didn't run 2 miles, right? So you get down to the end, and there's this fat guy coming back, and you're like, okay. And nobody says anything, they clock his time to be, you know, outrageous guy. And I saw that over and over again, I was like, I gotta get out. I gotta get out of this, but they wouldn't let me out. So I called my congressman, and then a family member had some benefit thing, and he actually talked to the congressman and brought it up. So then the next time I called, the congressman's secretary answered the phone, knew my name, and let me talk to the congressman. And working all that out, they worked out a deal with the Army out of the Pentagon to release me from National Guard status and to allow me to go active duty. At that time, Special Forces wasn't on the table. The Army was kind of done with me because I wasn't adhering to their bullshit. I wasn't going to my Guard unit, I was going to a different one. There was all kinds of stuff going on. My congressman had my back. Congressman showed this out of Illinois. And I went into the Air Force. I wanted to go do something cool. So I joined the Air Force under the delayed entry program until they got the paperwork set up. But I passed all the tests, the PASS test, to get into what is now Air Force Special Warfare. So I got my dream job, right? I went off to basic and AIT again, because that was part of AIT tech school. That was part of the deal, was I had to go back to Air Force base. And it has to do with the mentality that the Army has, right? And the difference between Army and Air Force mentality. And I learned the difference in the mentality. Army basic was all about doing your physical requirements and keeping the standard physically and mentally tough, but physically trained as well. And the Air Force was about attention to detail. And it was stupid, it was asinine, and it was stressful, like you wouldn't believe, but it was stressful in a different way, which led into the idea of like what stress does to you, you know, and how you deal with stress, and it kind of reaffirmed my belief in what I was starting to understand was like my meaning of life, right? So to me, meaning of life has to do with accomplishing things, right? But it also has to do with fear. And we've all faced fear in some way or another, but life and the way life is now, you see it in public, all the anxiety and things that people have. I've learned that conquering fear gets rid of anxiety, right? What is fear? What is anxiety but fear on a different level, right? You're anxious, you're scared, and you don't want to admit your fear, but it's fear of something or else, right? Well, when you conquer fear at a higher level, you conquer a big fear, all the little ones start to go away. And it's hard to conquer fear. Things like this, getting up in front of people and talking, is one way, right? But for me, the first one was jumping out of an airplane. And I knew that when I was going into TACP, via the Tactical Air Patrol Party, or now in JTAC 2, whatever, jumping out of a plane was a requirement that I was going to want to do. I was going to want to be airborne. And so before I went off to join into the Air Force, I made my family take me up to the local place to go jump out of an airplane. The big deal here is jumping out of an airplane for some people isn't a big deal. For me, climbing on top of the silo out of the farm or climbing up a tree was always a big deal because I'm afraid of heights. Like period. I'm afraid of heights. And so climbing up on top of this table, that first second, right, would scare me. Just a second, right? But you get used to it. You know, you get associated with that fear. Well, I went through the whole thing, and this was a static line jump out of a Cessna. Cessnas are small, it's not a big deal, right? But it's only, I think it was 8,000 feet or something, so it wasn't as high as doing like a free fall jump. But the whole time they're talking to me about jumping out of this plane, I'm almost shaking. whole morning, they're training me how to jump out of a plane, and that's all it was. One day, one half day of learning how to jump out of a plane. The requirement was that I put on the chute, I get in the plane, they connect me to the bottom, so no matter what happened, when I fell out of the plane, my chute went, right? It didn't matter, I was scared. And that fear stayed with me. And I think when that plane took off, I had what they call now an anxiety attack, or panic attack, or whatever. They didn't have those terms back then. I was just scared as shit, right? I knew that I was sitting right by the door, and this plane's taking off, and on top of the fact that I was gonna jump out of this small Cessna, I'd never been in a plane like that. I'd never been in a small plane, so I didn't, all that bouncing around and scary, small plane stuff that happens, I wasn't used to any of that, right? So the fear inside of me took control. And I was scared as hell. I couldn't even think. Everything started to close off. That fear shut down all my normal reactions. But I knew if I couldn't do this, then I couldn't do any of the cool stuff later on. And if I forced myself to do it, if I just made it through it, I'd be okay. Well, the door opens right next to me, and I'm looking at the ground, and there is probably a little bit of pee that escaped at some point during this whole thing. Not gonna lie, I was that scared. But the door opened, and the guy behind me, tapping me because my next job was to step out. There was a little pad on top of the wheel, a little grip pad, and you had to step down on top of that hub, and then you had to grab the strut and hang from the damn thing. And so being afraid of heights and looking down at the ground, that was enough, right? But to mentally force yourself to step out on top of that wheel, and then to grab a hold of the strut and hang on, I mean, think about it. You're already scared, you're shaking. I know I was shaking. They probably couldn't tell because the plane was shaking too, right? But I was shaking. But I did all of it. I grabbed a hold of the strut and I'm hanging there, and I'm like, man, I did it. And then I forgot that I was supposed to look back at the guy because that's when he was going to give me the thumbs up I could jump. And I look back at him and he's screaming, fucking go! Because I've been hanging there for long enough that I missed the entire drop zone. I missed the entire runway. And by the time I finally let go, because it took a second after he gave me the thumbs up and I looked back and all that, I let go. I ended up off the runway in the cornfield that was muddy as all hell. But as I jumped, as I let go, and that's fear and everything, unknown, that feeling of drop, all that stuff happened, the chute opened. And when the chute opened and I was stabilized, I had this relaxed feeling. I could see the curvature of the earth a little bit. I felt free. All that fear that I had, well, it was overdid all my senses, but now I felt safe. And I felt good. And I did all the things you're supposed to do. The guys on the radio telling me what I need to do, laughing at me because I'm going to miss the runway. And I was a little worried, but I wasn't scared. Right? I was under the chute. I knew that I was safe. I was no longer in ground effect, which is really where that fear comes from, being close to the ground, which I know a lot of you guys that fly or have been in any kind of aircraft know the difference between in-ground effect and out-of-ground effect type stuff. But I was out of that window, and the world was different. The view was different. And that view that I had that day, looking down on the ground, gave me a different perspective. The feeling that I had by conquering that fear and knowing that I could conquer that fear gave me a different perspective. And everything I did from that moment on gave me the idea that when you have a fear, whatever you're afraid of, whatever it is, the goal of life is to come back from that, to conquer that. So everything I did was like, that's dangerous, that's scary, let's fucking do it. And I was the guy that everybody was like, come on, man, come on. We could go this way or we could go this way on an op and it'd be safer. And I'd be like, fuck it, let's go. And we do it and we end up on top of the game because we didn't hide from the fear. We addressed it and went after it. So in 2000 I joined up, the work kicked off after September 11th, a lot of guys deployed. We started deploying all the time from my career field because as a TACP, my job was to control airstrikes. So I'd go on the ground with whoever needed you at the beginning, whatever team needed you, right? Whatever special team needed you, whatever conventional unit needed you, you would go with them to control the airstrike. Some of that was done from an operations center. So we would control it at the very beginning. I remember we did the invasion of Iraq and they pulled me back and they pulled me back again and I ended up at the highest level in our career field called the Air Support Operations Center. And I hated it because I was not gonna go shoot people in the face, right? I was gonna be in an operations center fighting the war from a chair. And we started this thing where we controlled through a UAS, a UAV, a feed from the aircraft. And the A-10s didn't have a pod that we could use, the F-16s didn't. Only certain F-16s and F-18s, really F-18s had pods that we could use back then to look at the ground and find the enemy and call the airstrike from back there. So we started using other assets. And we started using the Predator and Global Hawk, doesn't matter. We used a bunch of assets to first start looking at the ground and control these airstrikes way far forward of where we were at. Well, I wasn't JTAC certified. I was an apprentice at the time. I was learning how to be a JTAC. And my first control was during the invasion of Iraq. They pulled me over and they said, hey, sit down. We're gonna let you control your first, and it was a live control. There was, enemy on the other end of this control, live aircraft, and I'm dropping live bombs for my first real control. I'd done some practice stuff, so I had an idea of what I was doing. There was an enemy unit in a palm grove, and my first airstrike, I killed over 280 people. And then, you're in an operations center, you don't see anything but the feed, right? You see that dead bodies, you see the explosions, but you're watching it through we had a projector on a big screen in front of us. And so, it was real, but it wasn't real. It wasn't real until 3 days later when we decided to move up. And as we moved up, we rolled right through that edge of the palm grove where I had just killed 280 people. Well, 3 days later, there were still bodies in the road. And I remember this one body, as we drove up, it was severed right about here. And it was just oozed goo on the road. And the smell, the pungent smell that burnt bodies and bodies take 3 days later stays with you, right? So for some of you that have never seen that or smelt it, I envy you, because it never leaves you. Years later, I was controlling an airstrike in Afghanistan, and the enemy kept coming at us. And after I dropped, we had to go do sensitive site exploitation where we find all the stuff. We had to find fingerprints and retinals and stuff like that. And I had a flashback to that very first day where driving through it sucked and it hurt my soul seeing what I did. It had hardened me up. And the fear of having to do that again and again, you get more used to it. Years later, it's almost 10 years, almost a decade later, and this airstrike that I'm controlling, I had to go pull fingerprints off of what we could find. We'll leave it at that. So that flashback that I had to that day, that smell reoriented my mind, and it'd been many times things like that had happened in the past, many times that I had done a similar type thing where we had engaged people, but that smell brought back those memories. And I had forgotten that. On that same deployment, a couple months later, which is why I'm up here now. A couple months later, I went out with my team, and we were training the Afghan Army, a battalion of Afghan called Kandak. And we were doing a mission where we inserted overnight. We had F-18s on station before I showed up. I was controlling them in the back of a CH-47 or 52 as a, Chinook either way, right? And I'm inserting into this landing zone 5 miles away from where we were going to do the mission with the Afghan Army. And I had F-18 securing the perimeter of where we were going. I had them scanning the area, making sure that the enemy wasn't there. When you're a JTAC, you don't just go do the mission, you plan the mission. So we go through all the military decision-making process with our counterparts, be it the Army, be it the Marine Corps, whoever you're working with, your counterparts, you are part of their staff as well. So special staff, meaning you're not part of their unit, you work for their commander, but you still report to the Air Force. So you're out of their chain of command, but you do what they tell you to do, unless you disagree. So disagreement would be like if you're working with a commander and he tells you to drop and there's friendlies in the area, right? Our friendly, if you don't drop and you have the ability to tell them to fuck off, that gives you the ability to not cause fratricide. It also gives you the ability to not kill civilians if there's too many of them, right? Civilian casualties is a big deal. We don't want to kill civilians ever, right? But there's, limits. So in Afghanistan, the rules of engagement told me that I could secure our landing zone. So the F-18s were on station. I'm talking to them as we're infilling to the landing zone, and the F-18s are sending me a feed, just like the operations center had. And the ability years before, I'm watching the feed now on my chest, and the feed from the aircraft on this brick of a feed, but I'm watching this feed from the F-18s show me the landing zone. As we land, we make small contact from, doesn't even matter, but there were Taliban in the area. And the F-18s couldn't drop, so we had to engage directly. I was one of the first people off the aircraft. We took out the few people that were in the area, and then we unloaded the rest of the Chinook, followed by another one full of Afghans, and we had to do another pullback meeting as we're sitting there in the cover of darkness, because nobody could decide who was in charge. There was a U.S. Army major who was a logistics in the rear. He was a logistics commander, leading the team that was supposed to be advising the Afghan army. Well, he didn't think he was in charge. He thought the Afghan commander was going to be telling everybody what to do, but it was his job to lead the mission. And I'm just there as an advisor, a liaison, and come to find out, one of the most experienced people that was on the mission, besides the Afghans, had been fighting in that area forever, right? So the colonel from the Afghan side is waiting on the major from the US side, and so we sit there and we burn that LZ into the ground. Meaning, we just engaged the enemy, and now we're sitting there for 10 minutes without moving after we landed, because nobody could decide who was going to step up and just tell people to go to the next LZ, because we were supposed to secure that LZ before the other aircraft showed up. So I had to broker a deal between the two parties. And then, when both sides told me that they weren't in charge and they're waiting on the other one, I had, in lieu of leadership, step up and tell them, yeah, no, go. He said go. And play this middle bridge of telling people what to do and making them think the other person was doing it, right? So from that point on, I was the middleman, but I was also telling people exactly what to do for the rest of the day, right? And it was weird because I'm not in charge, right? I'm not a commander, I'm a JTAC. I'm a joint operator controlling airstrikes, a shooter, a mover, a communicator. I was in the mission planning, so everybody knew that I knew what was supposed to happen. The Afghan commander, the US commander, everybody knew that I knew what was going on, but nobody wanted to take the responsibility to be in charge. So here I am making decisions for the Afghan army and the US army. We finally get to the first LZ, the aircraft are landing as we get there, and it's unsecure, but you know what, we're just gonna go ahead and grab them and go. And we keep doing that till we hop into where the fight was gonna be in this valley we were gonna clear. As we got there, breakdown again between the US commander and the Afghan commander, and the Afghan commander is finally fed up, and he starts to send his guys into the valley to do the operation we're supposed to do, and the US commander sits down on the mountaintop on one of his lines while the other one's on the other one, and the US commander says, I'm done, I'm not talking to him. So now I have to basically beg a US commander to do his fucking job and move over and communicate with the guy that is running all the guys through the village. Because I can't do my job unless I know where everybody's at, right? I have to know where all the friendlies, all the Afghan troops are, all the US troops, and what's going on. Because when they inevitably clash with the enemy, which is the whole thing, I have to be able to call that airstrike. Well, finally, I talked the US commander in to meet the Afghan commander, and everything's calm. We're watching them go through the clearance operation in this village. And they start talking. The interpreter's there, the Afghan commander's there, and I'm there. And we're just, finally, things are going on and everybody's calm. and we decide that we're gonna move back up a little bit up the ridge line so we get a better vantage point on what's going on. And as we do, I start getting intercepts because, like the MI guy can tell you here, we're able to pull intercepts off where the enemy's talking and give an approximate location of where they're at. And as I do, I'm getting all the intel feeding to me. I was running the intel team that was out there, and it's complicated, it doesn't matter, but they were the ones relaying the information to me. And I was telling them that we were getting hits on our location to the Taliban. And the Taliban chatter that they were picking up was coming from our location, and it really threw me off because the only person there that was talking was the Afghan ground commander. And so now I'm, supposed to be engaging in me, calling in airstrikes, using that Afghan ground commander that I'm working with to help me figure out where the enemy is, and I've lost faith with that ground commander because I'm getting hits. Grid locations, 10-digit grid location, which means 1 meter of accuracy to my location on where the Taliban is talking from. The interpreter is an Afghan interpreter from Kabul. He's not a U.S. asset, so he doesn't speak the language fluently. He interprets what they're saying and then regurgitates that in a broke down, basic understanding of what he just said. And I don't know if anybody's ever dealt with it in a foreign language, but there's individuals that can repeat everything that they say, like if you go to the UN and you listen to them talk, they're saying word for word. That interpretation is what our assets within the intelligence community would give you, but that interpreter would say, oh, he's talking to his guys. And I was like, okay, who is he talking to? I want to know exactly what he's saying. Oh, he's just telling his guys to go here and go there. And I'm getting hits, and I can't tell anybody that I'm getting hits on our location from the Taliban. So now I want to know exactly what he's saying. And it was 10 minutes of going back and forth. And finally I feel all right. Everybody else is sitting down. I'm standing over 3 guys, and I'm now yelling at the interpreter because I'm pissed off. The Afghan ground commander, come to find out, did speak English, but he just was holding back, right? And I decided that I'm going to go ahead and take a knee, get behind my sights, and look down. I'm just going to stop for a minute, right? Take a break, try to focus on what's going on. And as I take a knee, somehow we had pulled back and sat down on what they said was a 500-pound bomb, one of our bombs that was filled with homemade explosives. When that was detonated by remote control, when I took a knee and started to lean behind my weapon, it detonated and it blew me to those trees out there. And in the same blast, it threw the Afghan ground commander and the U.S. ground commander and the interpreter in different directions. That cloud of smoke gave us cover, but at the same time, a complex attack started. We're on top of a hillside. The guys are down in the valley. We've got a mortar team set up. We've got U.S. forces trying to cover us. And at the same time, I have F-16s on station looking into that area. And when that blast happened, I don't know. I don't think I was incapacitated. I don't think I was knocked out. But it happened so fast. It happened so fast that you don't even realize what just happened. So I thought we were taking mortar weapons. I started calling the aircraft, and I started running to find everybody, and I'm the only one in that whole area. Everybody else is on different ridge lines, and it's just the 4 of us. So I find the Afghan ground commander and the interpreter first. The interpreter is all messed up. Blood everywhere, and he's pretty screwed up. And I know that both of them are totally out. Neither one of them are awake. Both of them were bleeding. The Afghan ground commander from the ears, and the interpreter was all screwed up. But I had to find the U.S. ground commander because that was my link, right? And I had to make sure he was okay before everybody else. And so I find him, and I grab him because he's asleep, and I do the first thing that comes to mind after I check his pulse, and he's got one, is I slap him a couple times because I don't have time to wait, and he wakes up. And I'm like grabbing him and pulling him up and asking him if he's okay, and he's telling me he's fine. And so I went back and I started to provide first aid to the other 2. The Afghan ground commander, I did the same thing to, and he jumped up like a frog. He had blood coming out of his eyes and his ears, and he was out of it. But he was screaming at me and grabbing me to pull me down into the fight to make, we're under complex attack at this point, meaning they're engaging us with small arms, but it's not effective. The bullets are impacting around us. There was an RPG that flew over the ridge line. All this stuff is going on, but I can't do anything about it. I've got F-16s on station, and my job is to control an airstrike to stop these guys. But I can't do anything because I got to help these guys first. And that's my first line. I'm talking to everybody. I'm making sure the aircraft are coming in and doing shows of force, but I can't do anything else. I can't even return fire and engage the enemy because I've got people that are bleeding and dying on the battlefield, right? So I start providing first aid. The interpreter's head was blown open, leg was severed, and I ended up providing that initial care to get him home. He lost his leg in the end, but he survived. The Afghan ground commander, he didn't even take a knee. He went down into the fight and carried on. And the U.S. ground commander was paralyzed from the neck down. So when all that happened, I medevaced out the U.S. ground commander and the interpreter. I didn't medevac myself out, right? Because I'm in the middle of the fight. I didn't realize that I had a piece of shrapnel that went through my hand. It was a sliver, wasn't a big deal to me. I didn't realize that the blast had caused a traumatic brain injury. I didn't realize that me holding onto my weapon damn near severed my labrum tendon, my bicep tendon, my rotator cuff, and sheared off a bone. I just knew I hurt everywhere. So when I got to the bottom of the mountain, and I was carrying these guys down the mountain, my priority wasn't to get on a helicopter and leave because I hurt. My priority was to face that fear that I had, the pain that I had, and get back up the mountain because I was the guy that was controlling the airstrikes. I was the guy that everybody depended on at the last moment when you're in a firefight to stop the enemy from attacking. We're like the medics of the battlefield and surgically stopping the fight from happening before it goes too far. Continuously over years previously, me calling in airstrikes stopped the enemy from attacking over and over and over again. As long as we can get aircraft off station, that can happen. So at the end of the day, that traumatic brain injury that I had at that moment, short-term memory and blocks my memory to be missing. I deployed a couple more times after that. I had a great career with the fact that at that moment I didn't medevac myself out. The Air Force wanted to give me an Article 15, which was non-judicial punishment because I did not medevac myself out. At the same time, my team put me in for a Bronze Star with Valor and a Purple Heart, which both the Bronze Star was downgraded to an Archon with Valor, and the Purple Heart was awarded. So they got rid of the non-judicial punishment. I didn't get in trouble by the time I got back. But because I didn't medevac myself out, I stayed on the team for the rest of that deployment. Even though I could tell my memory was kind of off, my hands were shaking when I went to write, my handwriting was gone. The biggest problem I had was I didn't even know it, but I had lost blocks of my memory. Years later, I met up with guys who were telling a story about some other firefight, some badass firefight, and I'm telling them that it was bullshit. And one of the guys looks at me and he was confused as fuck. And I just met these guys that day, right? So as I'm telling them that, the story they're telling was bullshit, the guy next to me who I just met that day too, really cool guys, but they told me that the guy across from me was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, dude, we're talking about you. And so this instance that they're talking about, this firefight that I thought was bullshit, and this guy was doing supposedly cool shit, was supposedly me, and I didn't remember it, and so I called him out on it, and I was like, guys, I've never met you before, you can't know anything about me. And they were like, well, dude, we deployed with you for 9 months. So 9 months of deployment, I don't remember. I don't remember spending up for it, I don't remember going on it, I don't remember coming back. I don't remember it at all, and I didn't remember them. So these guys here in Gallifrey my story is my story. I've got more. I got like all kinds of 20 years worth of stories, right? But Gallup Few and meeting up with these guys and what they do for people. They were already trying to get me into a TBI clinic, which was great because I've not had any help from anybody on the TBI side. My short-term memory is bad. I get migraines all the time. I almost didn't make it today because I get migraines on and off so bad. But these guys are there. They're there to support me and everybody else that needs it in any way. Anything that they do is dedicated to the individuals and the mental health of the individuals. So I appreciate Gallup Few. I appreciate what they're doing. And the biggest part, it hurts when I walk. So I know he wants me to get done here. I am done. But that blast caused hardening in my plantar fascia in both feet. It definitely screwed up my right side and everything else. But my plantar fascia, meaning every time I step, it hurts my feet. And so when I ran all the time and continued with all my training, it hurt. So when I got out, I stopped. The only physical activity I do now, and somehow it doesn't hurt as bad, but I rock climb. And again, the whole height thing and the fear is still there. So every time I climb, I beat back that fear a little bit. And the anxiety that I carry goes away in other ways. So I want you guys to think about two things. One, life is about fear, right? Life is all about fear. And it's not something that you're born with, it's something you require over a lifetime. Little bits of fear that add into your psyche and make you afraid of things that you're not supposed to be afraid of. Life is about beating back fear. Once you conquer the big fears in life, the huge fears in life, then it's easier to deal with the stupid stuff that you call anxiety, right? The things that stress you out, the small things that don't really matter, that cause you to get angry and happy and whatever, right? That cause those emotional turmoil in your body. So fear and conquering fear, along with love and care and all that other stuff. But fear is like the number one thing that you have to focus on and be cognizant of in the fact that if you conquer it, it'll go away. But you have to face it. You have to conquer it. I know that's kind of random all over the place, but I appreciate you guys letting me talk. Thank you.
I love that. We'll talk after, but that was awesome. For those of who did not have time or privilege or whatever to serve during the Global War on Terrorism campaign, that is one of many perspectives, and that's something that is, in my opinion, that should be said aloud, should be spoken about, should be conveyed to the public, because there's so much that guys like Justice or Ivan or JC or myself or Doug or anybody, Rachel, we all kind of have our own say, and that's not to say anything about those who served before us. There's so much that goes on in the military and throughout the world that we do not know about. A lot of times our information is conveyed to us through mainstream media saying, well, we lost 5 U.S. troops in Afghanistan or Iraq at this time, and X, Y, and Z happened, very, very, very 20,000-foot view. But I hope that all of you enjoyed the speaker, because this is a very intimate presentation that is not very widely known. And Justice, I appreciate you being able to convey all that, because I know it may have stirred up some things inside, but you did a great job. And it kind of makes me think about what we have here in life, or what we have, how well we have here, not just in Trophy Club, not just in Dallas-Fort Worth, but also within the whole country. We're not worried about doing the things that Justice had to do just for a day-to-day survival. We're not worried about when's our next meal going to be. We're not worried about losing 9 months of our memory because of men and women like Justice, JC, and Rachel who decide to serve and take that oath up. For us, there's a lot of us who take it seriously, who are willing to not just serve the military, but are willing to sign that blank check for the rest of our lives for this country. And so again, Steve, Justice, I appreciate you saying that. Sir.
I'd like to apologize to the ladies in the room for the language we used. I'm sorry for all he went through and everything, but I think he needs to clean up his speech.
We'll work on that, yeah. We'll definitely appreciate that. George, right?
Yep.
Thanks, sir. Again, I'm just very thankful for that presentation, because there's things I've heard about that TACPs, JTACs, PJs, and all the other acronyms that the Air Force has, and it's not very widely known. I know that they fall into the silent professional category with all the special operations community members, and I think it was a very, very well-spoken speech, and I'm just very thankful all of you are here. So please come, because Ivan, our military intelligence guy, he's coming to speak next month, June 14th. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and that concludes our meeting. Thanks for coming, y'all.